Welcome to the Victims and Villains podcast. If you guys are new to this podcast, this is a podcast extension of the nonprofit called Victims and Villains that creates content, hosts events to talk about mental health through pop culture. And 2023 is coming to an end. And along the way, we have done some incredible conventions this year, film festivals, and we have sat down with so many comic writers, artists, podcasters, other nonprofits, filmmakers, and more that have just not seen the light of day until now. My name is Josh, and today I'm going to be taking you guys on a little journey through our lost annals of interviews from 2023 events. And first off, let me just say it's a deepest apologies to the creators that are in the conversations of this episode. It was never our intention. It was never my intention to hold it for as long as I did. Some of these interviews we have been sitting on for almost a year. And the main reason why a lot of the structure of Victims and Villains was changing while some of these interviews were going on, and really just trying to be as present as possible with some of those changes that really needed. And as a result, some of these interviews got left on the back burner. We also started a second podcast that by the end of the year, you guys will, if you guys are supporters of our Patreon, you will be able to hear that interview as well. As a lost pilot that never really made it to fruition and kind of past the pilot stage, but it's a David Lynch podcast that we were planning and hoping to start. It would have eventually been a 7-year project that we would have been jumping into, and it never came to fruition for just life. Kind of only myself and my co-host Zach Gain, who was the writer director on the independent film Homewrecker, which you can currently stream on Shudder. Our schedules just kind of became a little bit too chaotic, and so you guys will kind of get to see some of the behind the scenes projects that we attempted to get off the ground this year in 2023. But before we jump into some of these interviews, this is your reminder to officially go support the Victims and Villains podcast network. That includes Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we have new episodes every Monday, talk about mental health and horror. Brilliant But Lazy, our pop culture podcast here, hosted by Alan and Josh. And also That's High Praise, which is currently on hiatus right now, but will return in 2024. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these interviews. So the first set of interviews that you guys are getting ready to hear come from Wilks-Comic-Con out of Wilkesboro, North Carolina. This con was the second time we've done this, and we actually also did a panel which we'll be releasing at another date before the end of this year with our friends over at Great State Paranormal, talking about gateway horror and mental health. And specifically, the interviews that you guys are getting ready to hear are comic creators, and they are the creators behind the title Celestial Night, C.R.I.T, and Home Free. They are writers, artists, and creators, and these all three have vastly different feels and tones for them. So if you guys love anything about what you guys hear in these next few interviews, then please click the links in the descriptions below to check out and support these guys. And I hope you guys enjoy this. We'll be right back. Hey, I am at Wilks-Comic-Con here in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, and I'm here with Chris
from C.R.I.T
and Dennis.
And I'm creator of the Celestial Night.
All right, so you guys got to tell me a little bit about these books.
So my book C.R.I.T is based off of a Dungeons & Dragons game my friends and I play. And I record the sessions, and I turned it into a comic book a few years ago.
Okay, so I got to ask, my editor-in-chief is really big into the D&D, RPGs, all that world, and he loves, like, the Let's Play, like, kind of podcasts. Or did you kind of get inspired from that and say, oh, man, this would make, like, a really great visual medium?
No, actually, my friends and I hadn't played in about 10 years. I called them. I said, hey, I have this idea for a superhero D&D. Got them together. It was just so chaotic. I was bored one night and just started drawing it. I didn't even know how to draw. I taught myself how to draw. That's awesome. And then it just kind of snowballed into what it is now. So it was all by accident that this even took into like what it is, but it's become a lot of fun for all of us, and now we're on 5 years in the same campaign.
All right. How long in between issues? Because I always know with independent comics, it takes a really long time. So how long are we talking about to create?
We launched issue 1 in 2020. I'm on issue 7 right now. So roughly about 3 to 4 months on every book.
We also had a pandemic on your side, though, too. So.
Yes, I had a lot of extra time.
Yeah, that too.
I did have a lot of extra time, and we were blessed because issue 0, a friend of ours came in behind me and did issue 0, launched that side by side with 3, so I was able to, produce 2 books at the same time. But I stay pretty busy. I'm always drawing or lettering or coloring or doing something. So
that's awesome. And all right, I gotta ask, tell me about your book.
Celestial Knight. I've been drawing since I was a young child. Created this character 35 years ago. It was in my head, stuck with me for 35 years. Meeting this gentleman and the rest of our crew gave me the balls to kind of create my comic. So 35 years later, got the character put into print. Character named Jeremy and his best friend's a dog named Norman. How they get their powers, and they wind up fighting a kaiju in Times Square. So it's issue 1, 36 pages. Wrote it, drew it, inked it, colored it, you named it, other than lettering it. He lettered it. But a good I don't say sci-fi, a good cape book. If you're into superheroes, that's my lane. And then we're part of the Savage Sandbox. We have 8 different creators. We have all different genres. So he's a D&D guy. I'm the superhero guy. We got an anime guy. We got a vigilante guy, suspense and horror kind of guy. We all have different kind of lanes we all flow into, but we're under the Savage Sandbox publisher.
So I talked to him about the process of his books, but you're doing a lot more. Did you also write and draw yours?
yeah, I do. Yeah, we're pretty much on the same page.
I gotta ask, because I think it's like the first time I've in a long time I've interviewed a creator that actually like has that specifically. What is kind of like the motivation to like just keep pursuing that? Because I gotta say, like that's a it doesn't sound like a lot, but like from someone that does create and like edits podcasts, puts out the social media, like all of that stuff. I understand that the editing, but like undertaking. But can you kind of talk about the undertaking and like your own mental health like process through creating?
So at least for mine, it's a grind. It's definitely a grind. You have your highs and lows. I had a moment yesterday where you feel like you're not good enough. You're like, look at all this great stuff that's coming out. But for me, what keeps me going is one, the guys I work with, just seeing the stuff they put out, them keeping me up on my lows, and the same thing goes around when they're feeling low, we're picking each other up. But there's so much more to it than that, especially for something I created 35 years ago. There's a reason why I stopped drawing for 35 years, and then 35 years later revisited it and brought it back. But there's so many factors that go into that, so many different lanes that we can go down as far as mental health. In my own personal story of why this book came out 50 years later. But yeah, to that, it is a grind, and you just got to really associate yourself with some really good people to get you through that grind.
Yeah, same question.
So my why for all this, actually drawing comics helps me get over being depressed and things. It's an escape from a normal day. I've worked 2 full-time jobs during the entire process, and so most of my nights have been dedicated to creating and getting better at my craft. Like I said, I didn't draw until 2019, so I started drawing. I didn't think I was that great. I had a lot of creative backing from my wife at the time. She was pushing me and getting me into it, and now, just like everybody else, you have your high days, your low days, and when I hit that low, I pull up their work, my friends, like the guys in my group, and I look at what they're doing, and I get inspired, and I say, okay, well, I know that at least 7 of my guys right now are going through stuff as well. I'm going to push myself too, because seeing me push through, because I've got my own personal stuff I'm going through that some of them know, and they know if I'm willing to push through my hard times, that they're going to do the same. And so we kind of do that together. And sometimes I'll just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, man, I'm having a tough day. I had a really bad day last week. I called a buddy of ours that's in the group, and I said, hey, I'm just having a really bad day. I don't feel good, And he said, well, what are you going through? And we would just talk it out. So I think one of the best parts about being in this indie scene and this creating with other people is you're not alone. yes, I work on my book almost solely by myself, but I have these other guys that I've been able to collaborate with and meet through social media and through the creative process, that we've grown to know each other enough that I know that they've probably been there. Hey man, I'm going through something. Can you help me out? And we just talk. And I think going back to pandemic being on our side, one thing that did come from the pandemic, I think for a lot of people, was realizing that mental health is a serious situation. And I find more now people are willing to talk about mental health than they were 3 and 5 years ago, because when we were all locked inside, it became a very apparent thing that it's not uncommon for all of us to feel a certain way. And I'm very happy that, after 3 years, I can call someone and not feel weird saying, hey, I'm depressed. Being a full-time father, full-time husband, working 2 full-time jobs, it was tough to say, hey, I feel this way, and not feel like maybe I'm failing. To call him, Dennis, or another guy that's close in our group, and say, hey, I feel down today. What can I do? And they'll just lift me right back up. And usually it circles back into, your book is awesome. Keep creating your book. Put that energy back in there. And that's what I like hearing.
It's funny you pulled up. Right before you pulled up, we were just having a heavy conversation. And it was about, racism and PTSD and how it's transformed our kind of lives and just understanding each other from different points of view. It's just crazy how these things, as every day we deal with, but then we all come together over comics and to create a process as that brotherhood of comics. And even in the chat last week, I put in there, anyone else having a shitty day at work? Because I was having the worst day. And all the guys did was, I'm having a problem with this boss, I'm having a problem with this one, and I didn't feel alone. And it was cool. And then we went right back into talking about our comics and our good stuff. And it was I just needed to get that out and someone to say, yeah, I'm having the same bad day, I have the same stinky boss, I'm having the same bad week. Cool. And then we just kept it rolling back into our books and back into that fun vibe we had. So just real interesting that you came by right when we're having this conversation. I was like, what are you listening to us? You were behind here, listening to us, talking about some shit.
I swear I was, and I was just scouring the files. I was like, all right, I need some independent creators. I think that's really rare. I have a lot of friends that do independent comics, and some have had good experiences, some have had bad experiences, but I would never say that you guys might be the first time I've ever heard of a communal experience like that. That's really cool that you guys have that, because I think that is vital to champion one another, not only for that, but also to be reminded hey, I'm not alone, like you had said. So I think that's really cool. I want to jump back into your book, because I'm fascinated by the fact that it took 30 this concept from childhood and brought it into adulthood. As far as character design, did that character design ever change? Did it ever evolve over the years?
So in the first issue, there's the back pages of it. You'll see actually where the character started. His name was a little bit different. His look was different, and then as the years went on, you kind of refined him. So he definitely evolved over time. His story always changed over time, bigger things. His motivation stayed the same, to be honest with you. When I created him when I was younger, it's because I was going through a lot of issues when I was younger. And then as I got older and I stopped drawing, it really was because there was a different part of my life where when I grew up, all this was nerd shit. You didn't want to be a nerd. So when I got to that point where I got the hot wife, that nerd shit went. I tucked that away, and wife didn't know about the nerd shit. And then when the nerd shit started tweaking along, we got married, and now she's now hot wife. Then it came to the forefront, and she still doesn't understand it. But back then, it wasn't cool, and for me, it always buried it. I didn't want anyone to know that I was into this, that I drew that. It was kind of, I want to say it was frowned upon, but it was called nerd shit in a really bad way. Now you can say nerd shit or nerd, and it's actually kind of a cool thing. Or you have a community now. But back then, it was a whole different story. But yeah, so it took a long time. I buried that when I went to college. I stopped drawing. I would do fun things in Christmas cards or birthday cards. I do things for my kids. But yeah, most of the time, just because I didn't want anyone to know, because there was that stigma behind it. Marvel changed a lot of that. Those Marvel movies came out and suddenly superheroes were cool. I was like, oh, okay, I can actually be a little bit more myself, be a little bit of a nerd. So I had kettlebells, superhero kettlebells, and I was I'm still a cool guy. I'm still tough and strong and the father. But I'm painting, Marvel characters on these kettlebells and still kind of keeping it true to my nerd side. You know what I mean? Yeah. Weird process. It's a long process. Everyone has a story, but everyone's process, there's so many weird lanes that they go through to get to that, where you are right now.
Yeah, it's and like a lot of what you're talking about, like bullying, like kind of like feeling like, oh man, if someone finds out about this, like I'm gonna hate. I was podcasting a couple of years ago, and we got on the topic of like guilty pleasure movies, and I'll never forget this. The guest that I had like stopped me dead in my tracks and was like, it's not guilty if it brings you pleasure, and that forever like changed my like mindset on it. So like now like I have tattoos on my body from movies that are like 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm like, these things bring me joy. So at the end of the day, like, you know, you have to do really what makes you happy. So I really respect that journey.
Well, even more to, and this, again, I don't want to go too deep into it, but the reason I started drawing is because when I grew up, I was in a racist age. So I was in a neighborhood that's frowned upon Asians. So to stay away from them, to stop getting jumped and beat up and called those names, I stayed indoors. And I stayed indoors and read comic books because it was about good versus evil. And I'd sit there next to my grandmother and I would draw for hours about that fight of good versus evil. And then I took that and then developed that talent into something that we are now. But it was taking that, growing up in that really shitty situation, feeling terrible about myself and terrible about my race, and then turning it into something positive now, which I could actually show and be like, I turned something really shitty into something really cool. So
you brought up like the subject of like both of you guys have like talking about the conversation you guys were having beforehand of like racism and kind of like how like almost like divided, like different the world feels now. Did any of those like elements like either influence or like are they like featured like in the stories?
So definitely in mine, because it's actually the crux of this issue is the American dream. And that's actually part of his origin. It's him realizing like there's an American dream that his father had set for him, and he's going to continue that legacy for his father. It's my story. My father came here from the Philippines when I was 2 months old. And there's a picture of him, which was based off this, was a picture of him landing in New York as he got off the plane and how happy he was. And that was always in the back of my head when I created this book, and when the crux of this story is him realizing I'm carrying on my father's dream. That's issue 1, but if issue 2, his origin continues. But for me, you know, it came back to that one little moment in time of, you know, that whole American dream. And again, it's based on, you know, something that at this day and age, a lot of people destroy the American dream right now. And I was actually just listening on a Rogan podcast driving in, how they were questioning what the American dream is right now. And I'm like, yeah, it's great to have that conversation, though, that we can question it, what is that dream now? Like, it's not the same as it was before. Doesn't mean it's good or bad, but we should still have those conversations of what is it now and how do we define it now? Because the world is so different than it was back in the day. Of picket fence and green grass and wife and dog and puppy and all that kind of good stuff. You know? Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
As my book does not have any racial undertones. I have, you know, I do have a friend that he's African American, and I asked when we were creating the book, do we want any racist undertones, anything to deal with? Because, you know, like in comic books, you have the Nazis and these other alt-right, these groups that you'll fight that are seen as racist. And I said, do you want anything like that? Because he had dealt with that in his life. You know, he told me stories about how he had, similar to what Dennis was going through, growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood and things that him and his father had gone through. And I said, do you want anything like that in the storytelling as we play D&D? Do you want to challenge some of those things? And he said to me, no, because that doesn't define my character. What's defining to my character is being a hero. And, you know, I'm a white creator, and he's a black creator. And I said, you know, part of the indie comic community does help. There's a place for black creators. Do you want to be part of that? You know, because I was trying to figure out where we were going to go with this brand. And he said, the only reason my character is black is because I'm black. So we're going to keep rolling with what we roll with. I don't want that to be the defining characteristic of my character. He wants his character to be the defining characteristic, him being a hero. And he's always trying to be a hero. Actually, how I describe him, and this is straight out of his words, he is if Eddie Murphy became All Might. And that's what he wants the character to be. And so we don't tackle those things. We decided really early on that we wanted the story to be more of an escape, because playing D&D for us is a way to escape our normal daily lives. And you know, sadly, that stuff is something that some of us deal with on a day-to-day. We don't want to relive it in our game and in our escape, so we leave all that stuff out. Our book reads more like an episode of Ninja Turtles meets Power Rangers meets anime. So it's a lot of fun, and so that's what we try to keep it as, is just fun. I commend the other guys in our group that have those personal connections to their story. My personal connection is I got my friends back together after 10 years of not even talking, and now we've been playing the same game for 5 years, and we talk every day. So that's my emotional connection, is knowing that my best friends are able to have an outlet. And one of my best friends has 3 kids. His kids get to walk in and say, my dad's a superhero, right? My kid gets to come in and say, my dad writes superhero comic books. And even in the story, one of the characters, in real life, he was an Olympic-class wrestler. And when he saw himself as a superhero, he was like, oh, man, I got to get in shape. And he lost 50 pounds just to look like his character. So we do have some emotional connection to our book, but not nearly the same as The American Dream. I love his story. Celestial Knights are one of my favorite books that we publish as a group. But C.R.I.T is all about having fun, escapism, and it will always be just more of like an escape story.
All right. Well, my last question for you guys, of course, we've been hyping the book up for like 10, 15 minutes now. They got to know where to buy it online.
You can get all the titles. You can find us at savagesandbox.com. My personal website is homebrewedcomics.com. Dennis has slatecomics.com. So we're an umbrella, kind of like what Image did back in the early 90s. We all have our own imprint. We publish under the Savage Sandbox brand, but you can find us independently as well.
All right, we'll provide links in the show notes below. Chris, Dennis, thank you guys so much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you.
What's going on? I'm back here at Wilks-Comic-Con in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, with Miss Michelle Lodge. She is the artist on the independent comic book Home Free. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
Tell me a little bit about what Home Free is.
So Home Free is about a woman named Sarah, and she's kind of trying to escape her situation in an America that's kind of crumbling around her in this sort of brink of a violent revolution. So she's trying to get out of America, and in the midst of doing so, she has to sort of confront her own mind and confront her own past along the way. So
Cool. So one of the things that I think comic readers and like some of our audience may not be aware of, when you have corporations like DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, stuff like that, you're pretty much assigned to the book. But it's kind of different when you are doing independent arts like yourself. Can you kind of talk about how you got hooked up with the writer on this book and how you kind of came to be a part of the project?
Sure. Yeah, John Kratke and I started working together, I want to say around 2013, I think. It's been a while. And we both really had this affinity for noir. So he had a script for a whole graphic novel that he wanted a noir artist for, and I was that noir artist looking for someone with a noir script. And that was on a website, I don't even know. It was like some comic forum. But, it worked out really well. We made that. And then the nice thing about being independent is you really do have control over what you want to make, what you want to say with your book, and how you want to market that. That's also the challenge of it, too. Like if you're working for DC or, something, you have their marketing team. But it's freedom to make your own book, really. Did that answer your question?
It did. And so you said something that like genuinely raises my curiosity, because noir, I feel like it's such a genre now that you don't see a whole lot of nowadays, and it feels very pulpy, kind of like a throwback to the Golden Age era. What is it specifically about that genre that you as an artist wanted to tackle and kind of like lay in that sandbox?
Okay, yeah. I think what me and John both love about the noir genre specifically is that it's not black and white, and I say that kind of laughing because the art is, but like the characters are layered. They're not all good, all bad. They're kind of a blend of motivations, as it were, and it's just kind of dark and heavy and realistic and gritty. So I think we both really like that a lot about the noir genre itself.
That's one of the things I really enjoy about comics is that I feel like superheroes obviously kind of take up a lot of the public domain, but then you get into great stuff like Watchmen and V for Vendetta and Swamp Thing, and a lot. You see Hellraiser, and you see like the multi like layers of this industry and like what the medium can be. And noir, I feel like, is, like you said, like it's really layered. And so, like, as an artist, does it help you kind of understand the mental health of the characters because of how complex the noir can be?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think so. What really fascinates me is, like, being able to see a character change and what creates that change, like what events happen to sort of propel them to make decisions that they make or break down mentally in, whatever way they may be doing that in the story. I lost where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well, so for you as an artist, it's fine. For you as an artist, digging into such complexities, such heavier themes, do you ever like find your own like self kind of like does it ever have an effect on your own mental health to kind of like be so deep into the trenches of that world?
Sometimes. Yeah, it's interesting. When I worked on The Black Wall with again, writer John Kratky, I got really into drawing these characters. It took me 5 years to make this 300-page graphic novel, and the character of Hank in that book goes through a really dark sort of, he goes down a rabbit hole, so to speak, and it was tough to draw him by the end of that book, I'll say that. Yeah, because as an artist, I want to really make sure I'm drawing the expressions, the poses, that these characters are going through in the story. So to do that, you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes. So it's probably the same for the writers.
So people can't see this right now because this is an audio podcast, but some of the art that you do outside of the books are very fun, very whimsical. There is a Deadpool, Taskmaster, Step Brothers movie poster back here. You have the Darth Vader son... Coppertone, that's what Coppertone parody behind you is kind of like jumping into like some of these more pop cultures. Does that help kind of like relieve you of the heavier tones that you tackle?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it's like a steam valve, to create those fun pieces. But yeah. I love them both. I love creating the dark noir stuff, and I also love the fun stuff. So it really is very different feel creating both of those.
Now, does Home Free, does it stay in that noir genre?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is my last question because I see you have customers coming to your booth. Where can people find you online?
Comiclodge.com, and all my socials are, available through there. Michelle Lodge Comics on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for spending some time to talk about your art and your mental health behind it.
Thank you.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Welcome back. If you guys liked what you heard, fret no more, because we have a lot more where that came from. Last thing I will say, but before we move on to the next Comic-Con, Wilks-Comic-Con is without a doubt one of the best Comic-Cons that we have ever had the pleasure of being a part of. We've done it twice, and we would come back and love to do it again in a heartbeat. The promoters that run that show are absolutely incredible. And with that said, we're heading into GalaxyCon. So on Brilliant But Lazy, our pop culture, earlier this year, we released an episode called Batman and Mental Health that was taken from this year's GalaxyCon. And before we actually set to do the stage, we had a chance to sit down with an author, a comic creator, and the man behind a pretty interesting organization, and you guys are going to get ready to hear all of those right now. If you guys are interested in checking out more about specifically these groups of individuals, then please click the links in the show notes and check these guys out. With that said, we'll be right back.
Well, hello, we are live at GalaxyCon right now, and as a fellow Baltimore resident and a current Richmond resident, this artist is definitely worth your time if you're from either city, or if you're just like Gothic literature. Her name is Catherine Baab-Muguria, and it's quite a mouthful, but she is the author behind Poe-for-your-problems. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it is. This is a great day. It's good. It's not the weather outside's so, but in here it's very lively in here. But tell me a little bit about this, because this is a really interesting book you have.
Sure. So it's the world's only self-help book based on Poe's life and work, and I got the idea a couple of years ago when I was in a fit of terrible depression, and I started reading Poe again for the first time since I was a kid. And I just found that he was kind of this heroic figure to me, because despite everything that went wrong in his life, he kept trying and he completed his work, which is a really inspiring message for a writer, especially when going through what I was going through. So anyway, I got super into him again. I read everything he'd ever written, and I'm a journalist, so I wrote an essay about it, and it went viral, and then it ended up turning into a book deal, which was amazing. That was kind of my childhood dream, and the fact that Poe helped me achieve that was just really special.
This is a random question, but are you from Baltimore or Richmond?
I'm sorry?
Are you from Baltimore or Richmond?
Oh, no, I'm from Richmond. I was born in South Carolina, but I grew up here, so he feels like a classmate or something.
I'm really curious about, like, what was the process of, like, where, I guess, like, what work of Poe's, like, eventually, like, kind of kicked off the, you know what, this would make a great self-help book.
Absolutely. So The Pit and the Pendulum has this first line that's like, I was sick unto death with this long agony. And obviously that's Poe at maybe his most dark. But that really spoke to me because I was in a dark place too. And I suddenly realized that all his stories about torture and death and whatnot, they're all metaphors for how difficult it is to live and to do your work. So, I don't know, it kind of kicked off understanding that he was talking on two levels like that. And it turns out that, like, I'm not at all the first person who's read Poe like this. A ton of other writers have taken up, like, written whole books on him, too, about how he has spoken to them at dark moments in their lives. So it's really kind of inspiring, and it's from a strange place, but I like that about it.
That's what I love about the medium of, like, books and, like, Gothic, and I'm a huge horror fan, so, like, I always think it's, like, really interesting that when you can find, like, hope or, like, inspiration from, like, unlikely sources.
Yes.
And I never would have, like, picked up an Edgar-Allen-Poe book and be like, you know what? Mental health.
Yeah, I mean, it's what he was talking about. I actually think it's what his stories are all about. If you read them as being, like, about depression, anxiety, and mental pain, it makes so much more sense. Like, he was writing this commercial Gothic fiction that was very successful, but it's kind of like Jordan Peele, where it's operating on two different levels, like the literal and the figurative. And so you're getting more out of it than you might, with other writers.
So I asked this off the mic, but I have to ask it on. Is this written from a clinical or satirical standpoint, or a little bit of both?
It's very much a satire. I'm a little ambivalent about self-help books. I think they can be very simplistic, and also they kind of ignore socioeconomic problems in our culture, telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and whatnot. I think that's kind of lame. So I was excited to sort of satirize self-help in general. But I'm also somewhat serious that I think Poe is like a heroic figure who can feel like a fellow traveler and a companion when you're going through tough things.
I love that. One of the things that I want to go back to, something you had just talked about, was talking about how you had been in kind of like a dark place mentally in your life when you started this process, or at least like started the shadow of this process. Can you kind of talk about the value of like a creative outlet for your mental health?
Yeah, I mean, the first part of this for me was, so I was in this really dark place, like literally crying in my bathtub, having to take mental health leave from work, unable to eat or sleep. And then I started reading Poe, and it drew me out of myself and got me interested in the world again. And then when I started writing about it, it was so absorbing, and I started to connect with other people too, which is cool. Poe has 4 million Facebook fans, more than Danielle Steele or James Patterson. There's a huge fan base out there. And once you get really into Poe, you end up meeting Poe fans all the time. I've gone to like festivals and conferences and so on. And it's kind of, does this sound too lame? Like it's been a way to like connect with people and make friends and like find other interests, to kind of draw you out of yourself.
As a content creator myself, I relate to that 100%. It doesn't sound lame. It doesn't sound silly, because when I started doing conventions with my wife, who's not here right now, but like when we started doing conventions for the organization, you met a whole lot of people, and some of my best relationships have come actually from just doing conventions and like talking with people that like similar things that I like, and vice versa.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I think that's the wonderful thing about them. You kind of get into it before you know what you're going to gain from the process, but it ends up being so rewarding, which is just, I don't know, it's made my life better over the last 5 or 6 years for sure.
That's so awesome. So I have to ask, Poe obviously has anthologies among anthologies of books. What is your favorite story by him?
Well, I really love the poetry. Ullalum is one of my favorites. I love his one, Alone. Anyone who's suffered from depression or anxiety will get a lot out of that one. Among the stories, I love Manuscript Found in a Bottle, which was it was kind of his big break as a writer when he published this. And it's just about a guy who is getting sucked into a whirlpool, But I think if you've ever lived through tough things, then you will recognize it, because it does feel sometimes like you're getting sucked into a whirlpool. And I think he's talking about both the experience of sadness and about a literal whirlpool at the same time. So it's a lot of fun.
And like I said, like he's got such a rich like library of content. And I'm curious, like, does this open the door? Does this leave the door open for like any future self-help Poe-based books?
Maybe not about Poe, but I've been thinking. I love Mary Shelley too. She wrote Frankenstein, so I've been thinking about a book called like Frankenstein Yourself. That would be also a dark self-help book. I call it gothic self-help because I can't use the traditional self-help. It doesn't do anything for me. But when I bring in elements of horror and gothic literature and that sort of thing, all of a sudden it sort of pops for me. And I think it's been the experience of reading the book for other people too, at least from what I've heard. The reception has been very positive.
I'm excited to read this, but if someone either watching this right now or listening to this, they want to go check this out, where can people find you online? Where can people get the book?
Sure, it's in any major bookstore. You'll find it at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon.com. It's here in Richmond at Fountain Bookstore, where they have signed copies. And just about anywhere you'll find books. It's in a lot of gift shops too, because apparently it's a popular gift.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thank you.
Captain Nostalgia here at GalaxyCon in Richmond. I am here now with independent creator and artist, Mr. Will Smith, and not the one you're thinking of. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am well.
Good. It's been a pretty hectic couple of days, but we're making some moves with our project and getting the name out there.
This is like double in size of what it was last year. Like I was really surprised to come in here and see how ginormous this place feels this year.
The last Galaxy I was at was 2020. It was literally about 3 weeks before COVID broke out. So it didn't seem ominous, but looking back on it, it kind of was. But I feel like the energy here is really good this year. Everyone's super positive and really feeling the vibe with the convention. I've talked with a couple of creators over in the professional area, and they're all having a good time. So
that's awesome. So you are currently like running a crowdfunding campaign right now for a new comic. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We haven't launched the Kickstarter yet. That's going to be going live in probably another few days, next week probably. But we do have a 5-page preview of the comic available. It's currently 5 pages from the middle of issue number 1. We're hoping to have out by the end of the year. Black and white for now. It will be full color when it's released. It's called Southtown. It is loosely based on a futuristic version of Richmond. The writer is from here. Actually, the writer and the colorist and letterer are both Richmond natives. And I kind of telecommute from Charlottesville, which is about an hour away. But yeah, it's about 2072. City is River City. Southtown is a subset of River City. It's kind of the sketchier, darker, more impoverished version or subset of that town. And in this future, the pharmaceutical companies and tech corporations run the show as mini governments. And we are following a gang from Southtown who take on little odd jobs to, usually from clients who are looking to dismantle said oligarchy. Yeah.
All right. So I always like to ask, and I know maybe you don't know this since you're just since you are the artist on there, but I'll ask you this: for independent comics, like, how did you kind of get attached to this project? Because it's not like, DC or Marvel or like one of the big boys where you just get assigned an assignment. How did you kind of come aboard?
So Joshua Eady is our writer. He's not with us today. He's actually at a wedding, but he will be back tomorrow. he came up with the concept over the last like 4 or 5 years and kind of has been developing the world. Around 2019, he kind of started moving forward with the scripts and the actual story arcs that are going to be involved. And at the time, Ali Slauson, our colorist and letterer, was going to be doing the core artwork, and she felt it was a little overwhelming for her skill set. She's a wonderful artist, but she felt that I was probably a better candidate for the artwork, so she reached out to me last year, probably May or June of 2022, and we all met up and kind of went over some things, and I started mocking up character designs and actually started with the actual pages not too long ago, probably in the late fall of 2022, and we're looking to have the full issue out by the end of the year, all things considered.
I always like to ask this is because, like, when you step into, for those that may or may not follow in the independent comics movement, there's a lot of time that is in between the issues, whereas traditional, like, more well-funded publications, you can get them out anywhere between weekly to monthly. How big of a scope is the story for Southtown?
It's actually intimidatingly large. I was actually talking with Joshua last night after hours about his grand plan, and he's thinking probably 9 or 10 issues for the first major arc. And we all do have full-time jobs. He actually drives a truck for his career. I'm a career bartender, and Allie's got a full-time job as well. So we're going to try to pad the time between issues by maybe getting some progress done on issue 2 before we actually publish 1. But yeah, it's when you're a professional artist with a major studio behind you. I mean, Marvel's got Disney and DC's got Warner Brothers. When that's all you have to do, that you don't really need to sustain yourself with another career, and you have the time to do it. So that can be a hindrance there, but it's one of the challenges we're probably looking at over the next months and years is maintaining the audience attention between issues.
Yeah, I have one of my best friends does draws and then also writes his own comics. So, but yeah, it takes him probably about a year and a half to do a single issue, and I'm always constantly going back and rereading because I'm always I got to catch up, I got to remember, I need that reminder. And so, I think, can you kind of talk about the art style that you're going to be bringing to the project?
So the art style, it's I skew a little bit more, not quite cartoony, but the realism is definitely a little bit. It's looser on the realism scale, but I still try to maintain the. I don't know if I had to compare the style, the artists that I follow that I kind of have tried to inspire me. People like Chris Baccello, Umberto Ramos. Trying to think, those are some heavy hitters. Fiona Staples, who does Saga, that's another series that has kind of been hampered with some delays, but that is also Brian K. Vaughan, who has quite a name for himself. But yeah, Fiona Staples has been a really big inspiration for me over the last few years. Her style it's simple, but it's unique and it's striking. She's very good at getting the focal point and punching up the frame.
I feel like, too, you teased earlier about how the book right now is currently sitting in black and white, but will eventually be color. Do you guys have, a plan of, making, a black and white version of it, down the line once it's been, collected in a trade?
I mean, that's entirely possible. I mean, we have all of the pages that are completely penciled and inked, ready to go. They're all digitized and everything. So we definitely could put out a black and white. Again, there might need to be a demand for it to do the printing costs and that kind of thing. But the concept being kind of cyberpunk, it really kind of relies on those bright, vibrant colors. If you're kind of looking for a Blade Runner or a Mute style of a future, You want those neons to really kind of pop, and I think that's going color for the interiors is the way to go to really kind of sell the concept.
Yeah, because I don't think Blade Runner would be the same if you didn't have those neon bright pinks and greens popping.
Yeah, the black and white version of Blade Runner would be nigh unwatchable. It works for some movies. Like, I prefer the black and white version of Frank Darabont's The Mist. It is the better version of that film. But then again, that is a monster movie. If you did that to Blade Runner, it would take away so much of the heart and soul of what that movie is, and also just the frames that cinematographer Roger Deakins puts together. Like, that man, he paints a frame. And it just, without the color palette that they use, it just wouldn't be the same.
So you teased the Kickstarter launches in a couple of days. By the time this interview drops, the Kickstarter may already be launched. What kind of perks are people looking at to support this?
We're definitely looking at a copy of the first issue. We're also looking at like pins, shirts, hats. We actually are going to have some merch links. I think I've given those to Alan. If I haven't, I need to do that. But yeah, like larger scale incentives, probably like original pages of the artwork. Maybe a cyberpunk commission of like a self portrait, or not of me, but like of the donor, with like an in-world kind of concept of the donor. Cyberpunk style. So original artwork, the first issue, that kind of thing.
All right, so this is the last question. I think I'm asking this more along the lines of as a fellow Richmond native.
Gotcha.
Are we like gonna see any like resemblance of like local businesses or like other trademark like Richmond spots in the comic?
Funny you should ask that. I did. So on page 2, in the kind of the establishing shots of it's called River City in the comic. One of the establishing shots of River City has the bridge over the James. Essentially, I use it as a reference point, so that is definitely in there. Also, the main bar where the gang hangs out is called the Rat's Nest, and that may be loosely based on a dive bar in town. It might be across the street from the Vale.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time. Where can people follow you online, and where can people find the Kickstarter?
So I am online. We've got a Facebook page for both my artwork and Southtown. Southtown Comic. It could be searchable on Facebook. Will Smith Illustration, that's Will with one L, is on Facebook, also on Instagram. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is few and far between, but at Nerdly Arts, NERDLYARTS. And I believe it's southtowncomic.net is our website. But I will be linking that through my own website, which is willsmithillustration.net. Again, Will with one L. But yeah, so you can link through all of those for all the updates. We'll be dropping artwork, we'll be dropping updates, we'll be dropping merch, Kickstarter, and crowdfunding updates as well. So,
well, thank you for your time, sir. Make sure that you guys check the links in the descriptions to support the Kickstarter and to check out Will's art. Have a good one. Last interview of the day. I'm here with Hector from Faith and Fandom. Hello.
How you doing, man?
How are you?
I feel like a claustrophobic armpit in this con right now because it's hot and sweaty, but it's good.
Yeah, I feel that. Like, so we have mutual friends with our friends over at Geek Devotions, and this is somehow the first time we've met.
The as seen on Kayla of Geek Devotions. I'm excited for them for that. Yeah, this is the first time I think we've formally been introduced and everything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to finally get a chance to meet you in person. Can you tell me a little bit about what Faith and Fandom is all about?
Faith and Fandom, for the most part, is a book series of essays on faith and geek culture, like devotionals and Bible studies on video games, superheroes, comics, anime, sci-fi, all the things. And outside of just being the book series, the main goal was to try and create at least a bubble in the con circuit in my region where people who are curious about faith can land and ask questions, or people that are believers that are passionate about nerdy things can have a place they can go to be encouraged.
I really love that, like, honestly, because I feel like when you step into a world like this, there's a lot of people that come to fandom to escape depression, bullying. That list just goes on, and kind of being able to use that to do something positive, like talking about, Jesus and the Bible, something that could be something a little bit intimidating at times, is like a really awesome outreach.
It is, and my friend Ashley's joining me at the booth this weekend, and I was telling, and this is her first show of like being behind a booth, and I was letting her know, like, listen, you're going to get some different reactions here. There's going to be people that are going to see this and be like, oh, that's nice, or move on, or not be. There's going to be people that are going to think it's amazing, and there's people that are going to hate it with a passion. But I just want to, it's going to come with some negativity sometimes, but as long as I know I'm handling things well and I'm being light and salt in a way that's faithful to what I'm called to, I come in with the mindset of, if there's some opposition, I shouldn't expect less than that. This just kind of like came with the service package of being a believer. It's like you're going to face like some opposition, and if I put myself in a place that's intentionally against the current stream, I can't expect not to be affected.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And Jesus never said that this was going to be easy. So I'm curious about what was the kind of the fandom for you that kind of kicked off or birthed this idea?
So it falls to Firefly for that. I had a friend put me on Firefly. I'd missed it when it aired. I was over at a friend's house for Christmas. He got his wife the movie of Serenity. And I asked, what is that? And he just literally took the present out of his wife's hand and gave it to me, and then gave me his DVDs and said, go home and watch this now. And I got involved in it. I watched it, and just a lot of what Shepard book and the interactions in Firefly really encouraged me. And I started thinking, you know what? I'm going to write a book series, or I'm just going to write a devotional just on Shepard book. And I kind of had that idea. And then once I actually started attending cons and seeing that there wasn't what I thought should be there, of just some place where people could connect. I decided, I'm just going to drop the Firefly thing and make it a whole nerd devotional aspect.
Yeah, that's kind of our similar origins. When I started going to cons, I'd ask people, how did you get into Batman? How did you get into Spider-Man? Why do you play video games? Just a bunch of different things, and it was similar answers like that. I need an escape. I've experienced bullying. My parents harass me, or just a number of other things, and there was nothing in our area at the time that was doing anything like this. And it's all right, well, let's bring the conversation of mental health forward, or let's.
The people right there, come right here and talk to them.
Oh, you're good. I'll edit it all out. But you would find that there was such a need for that. And so when you guys first started doing cons, did you kind of get that experience, or did you kind of get met with the reaction that you talked about with Ashley, to where it's kind of the half and half?
I'd say the first show I ever did was 99% overwhelmingly positive. In fact, it was so encouraging that I'd only planned to do it one time, and then I was going to do one show as a one-time mission trip project, and then so many doors were open. Other cons were inviting me to come do geek church services, or to just set up at their shows. That was encouraging. Now the discouraging stuff came later. I think the worst I've ever had was somebody literally flipped my whole booth over, just walked up and flipped it over. At this show, I've had people that have gotten on our social media tell us we shouldn't be allowed to be here and we should be banned, just this weekend. But it's overall, it's not been much that other than just bad attitudes. So, yeah.
Well, that is dope. So last thing is where can people find you guys online?
If you look up Faith and Fandom on pretty much any social, you'll find it. My main website is faith-and-fandom.org. And on there, you have links to everything, but also if you go to the blog section, every devotional we've written that's in all the books is available for free. So you can read it like in blog format.
All right. Well, Hector, I thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, man. Thanks for talking.
All right. Well, you guys go check out the links in the descriptions below.
Calling all cosplayers and photographers in the vibrant cosplay universe. Are you ready to take the spotlight and be featured in the hottest cosplay magazine around? Look no further than Creative Cosplays Magazine. Dive into a world of creativity, inspiration, and jaw-dropping artistry. We celebrate you, the heroes behind the costumes and the magicians behind the lens. Join our community at creativecosplays.com and follow us on Instagram at creative.cosplays and at Creative Cosplays Mag for all the latest updates. Your passion, your art, it deserves to shine. Don't miss your chance to be a part of the next epic issue. Submit your best work and let your creativity roar. Creative Cosplays Magazine, where imagination meets the page. Join us today. Creative Cosplays Magazine. Be legendary. Be creative. Be you.
Thank you again to Catherine, Will, and Hector for their time. And thank you to GalaxyCon for having us to do the Batman and mental health panel this year. If you guys have yet to actually check out that panel, provide a link for that in the show notes below so you guys can check out that episode of Brilliant But Lazy. And go check out Brilliant But Lazy if you guys are nerds like so many of us here at Victims and Villains. And again, just shout out to go check out Creative Cosplay Magazine, who featured us in their fall issue this past year, and we're just awesome people to meet at this year's cosplay world. But up next for you guys, we have two interviews for you guys today are both with filmmakers. First up is Nick Norman-Butler. He is the writer-director on the independent film My House, which you guys can currently stream everywhere. And we also have a leftover interview from this year's Genre Blast. Like I said during our Genre Blast coverage early on, we covered so many interviews. We had so much that in fact, it actually made some of our computer crash. And we're working on rescheduling some of those interviews that we lost in the process. But here's an interview with Randy Zuniga. He is the writer-director behind the short film My Roommate's Rent. I hope you guys enjoy these interviews, and make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button wherever you guys are currently listening to this, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast catcher, because it helps more people hear about not only fandom, but what fandom teaches us about mental health, and most importantly, raises awareness of mental health and these important conversations. So thank you guys to everyone who not only made this episode possible. Thank you again to Chris, Dennis, Michelle, Catherine, Will, Hector, Nick, and Randy, and conventions like wilks-comic-con, Galaxy-Comic-Con, Genre Blast, and independent filmmakers as well for making content like this possible, conversations about your art, conversations about mental health, and more. So until next time, I hope you guys enjoy these last two interviews, and have a great night. For those that might not be, we're always, one of the core practices of this channel, of our organization, is to constantly be encouraging people to support independent film and independent cinema. And so for those that may not know what My House is about, can you kind of walk us through a basic outline of the film?
Yeah, sure. My House is it's a contained thriller, filmed in a found footage style. So people who've seen Blair Witch Project years ago, that's found footage. So it's about a father and daughter. Those are the two main characters. They live in a house together. And at the beginning of the movie, Carla, that's the daughter, she finds a camcorder in one of the sort of junk rooms of the house, and starts to use it, and films her world, which we understand pretty soon is limited to her house, because even though a lot of things in the house seem normal, her dad seems like a normal guy, there are several hard rules, and one of them is that she's not allowed to leave the house. And so she videos with the camcorder and gradually starts to investigate why this is, and what the truth is behind the story that she's living under.
One of the things I feel like this film does really well is it constantly is taking you for twists and turns. I feel like every time I thought I knew where the characters were going, there was something else that would kind of pivot my expectations. When you were writing this, can you kind of talk about the journey of kind of crafting and standing out within the found footage genre for one, but also at the same time creating those twists?
Yeah, I think this is a one location movie, right? It's all takes place inside the house, and it was written that way because the story serviced that, but also it was very much a sort of we were using the boundaries, the physical boundaries that we had within the house that we'd imposed upon ourselves as a sort of a test of creativity. And so we knew that if you're going to just stay in a house, we need to have we need to keep it exciting. And so there are, as you say, that's right. There are a lot of twists and turns as Carla slowly uncovers sort of the mystery.
I gotta ask, Philip, like, I feel like sometimes, like, the singular locations, like my house, when you're, like, writing the script and kind of, like, drafting out the story, I gotta imagine that there's a little bit more of, like, a challenge to keep a story in a singular location as to why, like, why this person would be here and why the story needs to take place solely here. Did you have any of that kind of drafting the story and kind of even, like, during the location, scouting process?
Um, well, I think if you go way back to when I was in the script writing stage, I'd written many drafts of this movie over many years, where it was a much more expansive story. It was, unrecognizable to what you see in the movie now. It took place in America for a start, unlike, and it's ended up here in London. And it was, it had two different time periods, two different eras, two parallel narratives. And this is my debut feature film. So there came a time when I realized that, if I wanted to get this movie made, I needed to get real, really, and just
Sure.
make it something that was achievable and attractive to a producer. So I knew I had a good father-daughter story, and so I just decided to cut away all the extra stuff and just distill it down to what that story was about. And once I knew I could do that, I thought, well, why not just keep it inside the house?
That's really, like, really compelling to hear kind of like the early process of this, because I feel like what makes this so surprising is the fact that it is in a single location. It's not just hey, like, obviously, like, the house is, it's not as, I wouldn't say it's necessarily big, but it's, like, also, like, not necessarily small at the same time. It kind of fits in that. Did you have the location, like picked out before you started, or did you gotta be like, all right, this is what I'm envisioning, like, let's try and find something that can fit this aesthetic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fairly big house for the UK, but for America, it's probably not so
Sure,
big.
yeah, probably.
Um, but no, I didn't have the house picked out while I was writing it until, I had a draft which was good, and which the producers had sort of agreed to fund, and then we went location scouting and found this house, and then had to quickly do a quick redraft to make the scenes fit the house.
Interesting. That's really cool. And I'm as a horror fan, I am curious, like, was it more budgetary reasons, or are you actually like a fan of the found footage genre?
Um, I was never a sort of like a massive fan of found footage over any other genre. I'll enjoy it for a good story. I think there has to be a good reason for it to be found footage. But equally, I admire movies that are made in one location. I mean, there was a great. Did you ever see the movie Buried, which was
I did, yes.
yeah, a
Great
few years
movie.
ago? Yeah, I mean, who could have thought that you could make a whole movie in essentially a coffin, right?
Yeah.
But they did it, and and I think Phone Booth was another one with Colin Farrell in a phone booth. So yeah, I admire those movies from their sort of practical point of view. No, so look, I mean, it was making it a one location movie was a mixture of, okay, let's distill the story down, make it simple, but also let's make it attractive to producers. So it was a mixture of serving the narrative, but also serving the sort of financial expectations.
One of the things that I feel like with keeping in the found footage genre is that this movie plays around with the different types of found footage that you have. So like there's like security cameras, there's obviously the camcorder to kind of throw it back to Blair Witch, as you previously mentioned, but then you also have like the cell phone aspect of it. Why was it like really important for you to kind of blend in all of these like different ages of technology into this location, into this singular story?
Yeah, I think again there was. I mean, I think it works for the story. I mean, basically, without sort of giving any spoilers away, um, at one point a stranger comes to the house who and starts a conversation with Carla on a day when her dad is away. And this stranger seems to know quite a lot about Carla, more even than she knows about herself, even though this is a guy she's never seen before. He's just come to, talking to her through the window, and he ends up he prompts her to question her sort of existence really, and he gives her his own camera. So and he has his own reasons for doing that. So again, it made sense from a character point of view and a story point of view, but we also were conscious of the fact that we can freshen things up a bit here. Again, it comes back to that thing of when you're in one location, or not even just in one location, when you're writing a thriller, I think you just need to keep the pages turning, and keep everyone interested. So that was also a consideration. We can introduce a new camera here. It's gonna and Carla starts to film secretly. Again, not much for spoiler, but she has her own reasons for doing that, and so and she can do that with this other kind of camera. So it serves the narrative as well as keeping things fresh.
One of the things I think this movie does is it surprised me about watching it. It was how much it feels like how the dramatic elements really work and really flow together to where it essentially crescendos into this like really heartbreaking climax. And I know you said like that you guys had kind of like you had shifted between like what the story was going to be, but had it always kind of ended up with the ending that we see in the film?
Well, no, it didn't. It's going to be hard to talk about the ending without giving it away, but let me see.
Sorry, I'm just really curious about it.
That's okay. Well, the ending that you see in the movie was written in the final draft, so it was definitely a late addition to the script. But I mean, we were pretty close. We were there in concept and in theme, and what the resolution would be for quite a while. But just the practicalities came at a late stage.
Now, as this being your first film, what are some of the lessons that you learned on this film that you're going to apply to future projects?
Well, that's a very good question. I um, uh, this is also, but it's also hard for me to answer, right? Because
Sure.
there are certain things which not a lot, but there's really only one thing actually about this movie that I'm unsatisfied with. But I don't really, I don't really want to say what it is because I don't want to sort of I don't want to lower anyone's expectations of the movie if they're thinking about going to watch it, or if that, or I don't want them to watch it and think like, oh yeah, Nick was right. No, I'm not sure I like that part. you know.
That's
So,
fair.
but but let's just say there is one aspect of it which I thought I could have done better on. It's entirely on me, and I'll hopefully I'll get another shot and do a lot better.
I think as a content creator myself, I think it's one of the things that is really we all stand back and like we're always like the harshest critics of our own work and our own projects that we're putting out into the world. So it's not uncommon, I feel like, to hear something like what you're saying.
Hmm. Yeah. um, yeah, I wish I could sort of. I wish I could. I guess it's just hard for to sort of. It's hard to sort of admit to something. I know that other people may not be so harsh, or they may be more harsh, but I don't. I don't really want to like publicly admit to one the one that people will be looking out for it. There. Oh yeah, that's where Nick screwed up. So.
Well, yeah, I feel like every first time director always kind of learns a lot of as they go and, definitely first time filmmaker and, given that we're a channel that specifically talks about like encouraging people to check out mental health for any aspiring filmmakers out there, do you have any advice you'd like to offer them?
Um, Well, I'm also very interested in sort of, how you guys um, try to reduce the stigma of mental health, especially because
Sure.
um, I'm writing something else at the moment which deals much more directly with, it has a protagonist who has mental health issues. And one of my goals in writing the movie is to reduce the stigma to do with that mental health condition. And so, and I think that, and the methods I'm choosing to do that is just to be open about it. So, and to write about what it's like for this character, write about what it's like for them in a world where other people think they're quote unquote crazy, or unpredictable or irrational, and what it's like for them to be judged that way. Where so in just as my house is a very subjective film. It's in the way it's filmed, but also because it's the clues in the title, right? My house. It's one character's perspective, and this new one I'm writing is also from one character's perspective, for that being the person who has a clinical diagnosis of a particular mental health issue. Um, so I guess what I'm saying is a bit of a long-winded answer to say, like, I really like what you guys do. Maybe in the future I'll send you the script and you can all tell me, like, here's another way you could reduce the stigma of mental health in your script. But I haven't really answered your question. The question being, do I have any advice for other filmmakers? I would say, when people ask me this question, what I say is, first, take a look at yourself. Like, so for me, I know that I'm a very impatient person. Okay. I like everything to be done fast. And so my biggest but the thing I had to adjust to on set was when things didn't go fast, I started to get a little bit worked up, and needed to learn a bit more patience. But that may not be the same for everybody. Other filmmakers might look at themselves and see, oh, I'm not good at communicating. So they need to, when they get on set, they need to work on communicating better. Other filmmakers might look at themselves and say, oh, well, I overthink everything. So they need to work on, being calm and keeping things simple. So there's not one bit of advice for everybody. I would say, like, try to know yourself first, know what your weaknesses are, and then work on mitigating that when you're making the film.
It's actually a great segue into one of my last questions is, so for us, like how we as a publication and a nonprofit, we take character journeys and we look at, mental health themes or that are woven into the tapestry of film, television, comic books, etc., to really kind of analyze and really bring the conversation to, like you said, like just destigmatize, because people are more willing to open up and talk about mental health if it's through the lens of something that they're already passionate about. So if they're something like, looking behind me, like, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Pinhead, Ghostface, like people have more of a willingness to be open, and it's like, okay, well, X, Y, and Z characters have gone through this. And for my house, one of the things that I feel like is a really strong thematic element is this concept of identity. And I don't want to give too much away, but presenting that and kind of having that be our protagonists' really main arc throughout the course of this is like, identity is something that is really crucial, because I feel like sometimes if we aren't sure of ourselves, or aren't sure of, the things that, we are, I guess, are sure of ourselves, like it that has a really big handle in kind of messing up our mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're kind of creating the character journey uh of the young lady in the movie, can you kind of talk about the process of, bringing that mental health journey to life?
Um, yeah, I'll try anyway. Let me just think about that for a second. I know you said this, you can edit this video, so
Yeah.
um, so the lead character Carla doesn't have I didn't write her thinking this character has a mental health condition, but she does live in sort of what we soon discover is quite an extreme environment, um, a repressive environment, but also a loving one. So I guess in some ways you could say she's under coercive control, and is not allowed to do, and is deprived of a lot of freedoms. And through the film, she not only comes to understand this and see it for what it really is, but ultimately triumphs over it, and and sort of emerges victorious from it. So I wanted her to be a strong character. She was always going to be someone who doesn't take any crap, and I wanted her to come out as a winner at the end. And I think I suppose she also, through the film, she learns to embrace her sort of, as she makes each discovery, though they may be shocking along the way, she is able to sort of embrace that. And what's that phrase, the famous Navy SEAL motto: improvise, adapt, and overcome. And she does that in large measures, all three of those things. So I think that's a good motto anyway, that I try and sort of one of the mottos that I try and live by, and I think that might be a good takeaway for your listeners too.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about this movie for like 15-20 minutes now, and like obviously if people are interested, where can we find it, and where can people follow the journey of your filmmaking?
Sure, yeah. So the movie's out on Apple TV, iTunes, and Amazon, amongst other places. So you can find it there. It's called My House, starring Mirren Mack and Francis McGee. And yeah, I hope your listeners enjoy it.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
This film played at the Friday night midnight block. It kind of kicked off the Saturday festivities, so to say. Played right before Fat Fleshy Fingers, which in and of itself, that movie is already weird. And this movie is kind of really experimental. Can you kind of walk us through the premise of this film?
It's about a woman who can't get to her. She's got some mental issues, and she's trying to get to her pills, and her roommate is a prostitute, and she can't get into her apartment, and she just starts to completely unravel, ends up seeing a bell pepper on the moon, and just goes from there.
What I love about this movie is that it is very experimental in the way that it delivers that. So like they're kind of summing up the plot in that way. Like I never probably could have summed it up quite precisely like that, because the thing that I think is really interesting about this film is that the film actually has you question reality as the protagonist is also questioning reality. Can you kind of talk about the way in which you were experimenting with a lot of the ways that you were storytelling, and kind of how you wanted to perceive false perception in this movie?
I think I wanted the whole movie to be like, the viewer's not quite sure what's real and what's, just like she would be in her state of mind. She's not quite sure what's reality and what's fake. And that's what I want the viewer to kind of feel like.
It works. It really does, because like I felt like I saw this originally at the theater. I've seen this short film twice, and both times like I thought it was like a fever dream the first time I saw it, and I was like, maybe I'm just tired. Then watching it while I'm like wide awake, I'm like, no, it is in fact a fever dream. What were kind of the elements that you wanted to kind of bring into this in terms of like tone and just kind of like straight weirdness?
It all stemmed from the bell pepper. I was, my buddy owns an antique shop, and that's where I found the bell pepper. And I said, this needs to be in a movie, and it needs to be a really weird movie.
I was gonna ask at what point the bell pepper got introduced into this movie.
Yeah. So it was just I saw the eyes on it, and the eyes were so like just wide eyed, and I'm like, I need to use this. I need to figure out what to use this for.
So this movie kind of has it goes through a couple of different realities. I mean, it packs so much into its 5 minute runtime. You talked earlier about like the experimental, like wanting to really play around with the story. Were there like any story beats within this that you kind of really, regret not having in here? Are you happy with this short as is? Is there like an alternative version of this elsewhere?
There was never really an alternative version, and it never plays out in the film like it exactly plays out in your mind. But I think the general just mass confusion
Sure.
came across, and so I was like, okay, I'm happy with it. I think that the roommate being a prostitute didn't come out as much as it should have.
I mean, it's implied in like a couple different parts in this, and I think that it's done in a really tasteful way, the where it is, because this is a kind of short film that you're not really diving into the the environment around Fall, but you're really diving into the psychosis of Fall as a character, and so much so that you're kind of left with this like, oh crap, kind of like moment in the last closing frames of this. And this film ends in a very ambiguous way. Playing with perception and playing with what we think we're experiencing as the audience. As a storyteller, I feel like the ambiguous ones are always the hardest endings to do. When you were writing this, could you talk about the what it was like kind of developing this ending, kind of this trauma and this underlining uh theme of like kind of almost like the cause of all false trauma that we kind of experienced throughout the short?
Um, I felt like when she finds out, you just capture when she drops the phone. She had killed her father when she was young, and she had kind of buried it deep in her own mind. And the drugs are kind of helping her keep it buried. And without the drugs, in this crazy weird way, it all came to the surface. And I thought the only reaction get because I always wanted it to be about a 5 minute short. So I thought the only reaction that justifies it is just her just in shock dropping the phone. Or else you have to go into a much longer short.
It's always really hard. Like I always think that like because I'm a programmer myself, and I always find that like when it comes to storytelling, short films are like a master work in and of themselves. Because you have these really graceful shorts that are 3 to 5 minutes that are packing so much in it. They're simple, and you have these shorts that sometimes the range from 10 to 15 minutes that are sometimes capable of telling those stories and sometimes aren't. And then you have the 20-minute ones that are kind of like the 5 minute ones, but on steroids.
Right.
And I really think that this one does a good job at kind of like being weird, being individuals, and it kind of sets out to be everything it needs to be set out within these 5 minutes run
Thank you.
time. But this I want to talk about the set behind her, because the cityscape it feels very dreamlike, but it's obviously that it's like cardboard, and it's very like you could feel the DIY elements in this. But I really think it plays into her psychosis. So when you were designing the set around Fall and kind of the environments that we as the audience would go on, uh, how important was it to kind of really kind of keep these weird kind of like looking like buildings and skyscrapers and stuff like that?
I was debating for a long time just doing a green screen all the way across. But then I was like, well, I want it to look kind of funky. And doing I think doing the green screen all the way across would have had more of a realistic look. And I think it would have taken us out of that moment. But, I go back and forth on it. I go back and forth, but I like the way it ended up, but I do kind of go back and forth.
I think it works because it feels like it's a perception. It's like a personified perception of Fall's psyche. So like the entire question, it's a kind of like a great introduction to the themes and kind of experience that the audience will have within the 5 minutes of the short. But this one's kind of coming to its close in terms of festival runs, but where can people watch My Roommate's Rents? Where, is it coming to YouTube? Is it coming to Vimeo? However you say it.
I think after probably around the first of the year, I'll probably either put it on. Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube. I think that's the route.
So where can people find you online then?
Instagram's the best. It's at Rand RAND 0816. That's my Instagram page is the best way to follow me.
All right. Well, Randy, thank you so much for your time. Well, that is going to do it for us. We'll put a link in the show notes below where you guys can find Randy's Instagram, and to keep an eye on our socials. And when My Roommate's Rent goes live, you guys will share it to our socials as well. In the links down below, you guys will find links to our social media, Patreon, more podcasts, and movie reviews like what you're watching right now, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button below so that way you guys don't miss another Genre Blast moment from us. Until next time, stay classy.